Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my wormery, preparing to check in on a worm bin that's due for a feeding. So down here I've got systems that have labels on them. Everything to the left has labels on them. Those are all active bins with worms living in them. Over here I've just got a couple freshly built systems which are still awaiting occupation. So the system that we're working on, being the youngest of my systems, today at the age of 42 days of age, it is presently still the youngest of my systems, but probably not for very long. When we last checked in on these little guys, we had talked about leaving a couple top covering pieces of newspaper out there for them, which we forgot to do. But when I stumbled on these sheets that we flashed for a moment on the last video and then forgot to deploy, I just threw them in here as sort of shade cover, but today we will actually place them in under the plastic so they're part of the system. So we're going to get this bin up on the bench and we're going to take care of getting them fed. So let's get to work. It was only a couple days ago that I fed the outdoor worm bag, or was it yesterday? I forget. But they got pretty much the same exact feeding. I had a couple of these peaches that had gone bad, and just like when I gave one of these to the outdoor worm bag, I had given it a good cut all the way down to the pit in the middle, but it's perhaps because it's frozen still, it just doesn't want to pop into two pieces, so they're going to get it just like so. Same with the banana peel here. Last check-in was pretty exciting because we were coming in on the mango that had been fed the time prior. And so 2 feedings ago, we put an entire mango in. In that case, we didn't cut anything. They had to get through the skin on their own, whatever, and they did a great job because last time we came in, they had taken a pretty good-sized dent out of that mango. But there was still probably half of that thing remaining, so we didn't let that dissuade us from giving them even more food. So on top of the remains of the mango that went on the very bottom of the feeding zone, that filter that I just removed, the coffee filter, was just an indicator to show us where we last fed. But then on top of the old mango came in some bedding and some of the part of the food that they were given. I think then we laid down another layer of bedding and even more food, perhaps even more bedding on top of that. So it was a nice abundant amount of bedding that we gave them last time, mostly in the form of this shredded type stuff. I've got more of that on the side here, but I've also got a piece of newspaper here, a soiled paper towel. Those are some of the things I had really intended to use as bedding for the feeding today. I also sometimes like to collect up some of this loose matter out on the top surface, especially stuff from the edges that's a little bit dry and perhaps not getting as much appreciation from the worms as it could be if it were more damp. So this is the stuff I'd like to try to get back into service. We'll see if we can make use of it and submerge it when we're setting up the feeding. So let's plan on putting the feeding right back where it is now, down the middle. I am curious to see what's up with that mango. Obviously the mango seed is still going to be in there. That thing's like a huge tough object, but I'm just wondering, are we still going to see any leftovers of the mango itself? I guess we'll just start plowing through the feeding zone and we'll see what we see. I've just encountered a very, 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 very old husk of a mango seed, one that I had actually put some slices into. You could see where the cuts were made, and in this case the whole mango just went in, and the seed will still be just in the husk if anything remains of it. I mean, if anything remains around it of the fruit. So I think that this must be part of it. Just a very paper thin piece of skin, I suppose. And if I could sort of shake off some of the material that's adhering to it, I believe we have pretty much just the seed. Well, I mean, this thing is like a thick, almost like a coconut shell, tough material, super tough material. And the seeds, I believe, actually inside this thing. I don't know what the name of it is, but it's like the outer husk is what I refer to it as. And the amount of time that it's going to take for it to go from this, which is only a few weeks in the bin, perhaps 4 weeks now in the bin, to something like this, I would say probably a year. Or close to it. So we'll see. We'll see how these little guys do with that leftover of the mango. Yeah, we're only 42 days in, so this is a really young bin. We got a long ways to go. And, you know, if they're unable to complete it, when the time comes to finally move them out of the system into a new home, the thing can just follow them into their new home. So the one thing that I almost always forget to do is to try to be conscious of the fact that this is the system where we're running a little bit of a multi-year test. It wasn't intended to be that. It was just a complete unknown in terms of what it might take for a cork out of a bottle to break down in a worm bin. And I do know that the cork was deployed into this system, and I can almost guarantee that it is still intact to whatever degree it was still intact when we last saw it, probably a few check-ins ago. But it does slip my mind sometimes, so I figured, you know what, as long as I'm thinking about it, let's see if we might just pay a little more attention to whatever it is that's brushing past my fingers as I'm going through the material. Perhaps if we do bump into it, we can take note and check it out. So I've got coffee as well. No coffee filter today, so it's a good thing the coffee filter that was being the feeding zone indicator is still in good shape. We could just reuse it. So let's I've also got that peach, and I've got the coffee. So let's think about getting some of this old stuff that we encountered along the way back in. Mainly the stuff that appears to be leftovers of the mango. Ideally, if we had the cork, I would be putting that right there into the heart of the action too. So we'll see if it surfaces, but we're not really going to go out of our way too much to try to locate it. So I've also got this thing here, which I'd like to do away with. Pretty good sized piece of newspaper. It's too bad we can't just alright, persuade this peach to come apart. So we can use the peach as sort of the reason to do a little arts and crafts project here, and perhaps challenge our little worm friends by making them have to work for it. They gotta now go through that piece of paper in order to get to that yummy morsel of food. We'll help them out here. Why don't we do that? We'll dampen it a little bit. That'll just make it softer and easier for the wormies to adopt as a playground and a feeding place. And I kind of like the idea of doing this because it's not going to act as a sponge and draw a whole bunch of moisture in from the surrounding materials in the bin. This way it goes in with its own moisture content. You know, I got these old pepper seeds. They didn't look as nice as they could, so I didn't put them aside with which to make worm chow at some point in the future. I just made worm chow. Got almost a full container of it here, but we'll put that in on top of the coffee. So that's just what we do around here. Alright. This still has a few seeds in there. Perhaps we can even use it as an excuse to operate our spray bottle one more time. When I looked at my glove earlier, it just seemed like so little stuff had adhered to it. Usually in my worm bins, the material's kind of damp and does have the tendency to collect on my glove because it's damp and sticky. So the fact that I didn't see any of that going on made me wonder if perhaps we could be a little bit more generous on the moisture. And you know, I did bring out my freshly reloaded supply of worm bedding here, the prepared stuff. So the newest stuff is the one with the white copy paper in it. The older stuff is the pink from the old tablecloth. So we'll take from some of the stuff that's been sitting around here for a little while and priming and getting cozy. And perhaps we can even increase the appeal of it by dropping even more food down into it. As far as moisture goes, I don't know, I think we're in good shape. We're not going to overdo it. I'm sure the worms don't mind, and you know, I usually try to start new systems a little bit shallower, but But this system feels deep. I don't know why. This feels like a much deeper system than what I've usually got. Perhaps I just started out with a little bit more bedding than I normally do. And it's just a little bit weird. So I guess the only thing we need to be mindful of is to not forget what we meant to do last time and totally spaced out on, which is to give them little top covering pieces of newspaper. It's the reason those pieces were here already in the first place, so let's finally follow through on what we meant to do 2 weeks ago today, which is to give them some additional stuff, which ultimately will just eventually just turn into more bedding for them. And, you know, we could even make it easier for them to like this paper as well by giving it a little moisture content as well. At the same time allowing us to return some of this lovely material stuck to my gloves to the system. So this way everyone's a winner. Let's get this top covering back on here and we'll be done. So that's it for our check-in, our fourth feeding now of the 42-day-old system with red wigglers living in it. That's pretty much what it means when you see only a date on the label and no indicator of what type of worm lives in there. These are red wiggler worms and they're looking good. Hopefully you agree. Alright everyone, that's it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.